Right. I'm good to go when you all are.
Okay,
right.
Jack, I think we can go live then.
We are live on the YouTube. Do you hear me?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
All right. Welcome, everybody. It is May 22nd. This is House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. And we are here with Director Holquist of the Vermont Community Broadband Board to talk about the federal termination of our Digital Equity Capacity Grant. So we'll just quickly introduce ourselves. I'm Representative Kathleen James from Manchester.
Richard Bailey, Memorial 2.
Chris Morrow, Windsor Bay.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Dara Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Klempner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Scott Campbell, representative from St. Johnsbury.
Great. And with us in the room?
Gwen Zakroff, lobbies for the VCBB.
Great. All right. So for the record,
Rob Fish, Deputy Director of the Vermont Community Broadband Board.
great.
And I'm Christine Holquist, the Executive Director of the Vermont Community Broadband Board.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the Digital Equity Grant because it has the word equity in it, should not confuse the Washington administration at all, because it's about serving all Vermonters. And don't be intimidated by the number of slides here. We really want you to understand that this really is about the benefits to all Vermonters. Next slide, outline. So we're going to cover the status. It's terminated, but we'll talk about what we're doing in terms of terminate, the response, the grant history, the impacts to the VCBB, and most importantly, the impacts to Vermont. Next slide. So I was in the gym working out at Friday night about 7 p.m. I took a break and looked at my phone and I saw that it was canceled at 6 p.m. on Friday night. So it was just recently canceled. Immediately said, "Oh, again, I'm not going to finish this workout." So I went back and started working on it. We all did. It was immediate loss of $5.3 million in funding and a potential loss of additional $5.3 million. Because what happened is federal government, this was a $2.75 billion program across the country. $840 million had been distributed, but there was a commitment to distribute the rest, and our share of the rest would have been another $5.3 million. So if you look at total impact, it's a $10.6 million impact. We immediately got in contact with the Attorney General's office. By Saturday noon, we had responses. But we're still committed to this goal that you'll see in this presentation. It's high quality, accessibility with the technology, which many people in Vermont don't have that technology access at this point. And when I say we're currently in crisis mode, we're in crisis mode because what we're doing is we're back to the drawing board on the plan, because the benefits of this program, we still want Vermonters to get all of these benefits. We're not here to ask for money. That's the last thing I would want to do right now with the position that we're all in. Next slide. I'm really proud of how quickly the board and we all responded, because at 1 p.m. Monday, we had an emergency board meeting, and the board basically said, figure out how to move forward, which shows that the board values this program. We're in extensive coordination with the other states and the Vermont delegation, or the Vermont delegation, the congressional delegation of Washington. Again, by the end of the day, Monday, we had responses from the congressional delegation on this. We're exploring legal options. If you look at this from the standpoint of legal, there's a couple reasons why this was an illegal move. I'll talk about it in a minute. Our team is developing a skinny down plan that we're going to present to the board on June 2nd. We've done tremendous amount of media outreach, public outreach, and we're going to continue to educate Vermonters on the value of these digital connections and the value of fiber connections And really what we're the phase we're in now, and we talked about greater than 60% of the Vermonters now have access to 100 over 100. But most important thing is maximizing the positive social impact of these investments. We're not just building a network here. Next slide for my covered population. So here's where the problem comes, right? If we had known, if we changed the name to digital empowerment right away, but if we had only could have looked ahead, we wouldn't have called this an equity program because it really is an empowerment program. So it's codified by Congress. It addresses groups, rural, aging, low-income veterans, people with disabilities, those with language barriers. And here's the problem word: members of racial and ethnic minorities and incarcerated people. So the Trump administration said, oh, this is a DEI program. But if you look at this program, it impacts 95% of Vermonters. And when I think about those populations, I'm in 2 of them, but I don't need the help. It's really getting to the people that need the help is what this program was all about. These are big general categories impacting 95% of Vermonters. But if you look at racial and ethnic minorities, they happen to represent only about 8% of that 95%. Yet that's when we talk about why this is illegal, because the Trump administration claimed it was a DEI program. It's clearly not a DEI program. It's a benefit all program.
I'm sorry, I missed one thing at the very beginning. The additional 5.3 million was the additional 5.3 million, was that matching? I missed where that was coming from. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the federal program, the total the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act committed $2.75 billion to states for digital equity capacity funds. They determined that Vermont's allocation was 10.6 million. And we were issued 5.3 million. And once we finished the first phase, we would get the additional funds based on the plan.
I see.
So it was the 5.3 million in hand, plus the potential 5.3 million that we were our share was calculated.
But the
Okay,
5.3
thank
in hand, you get to keep, or they pulling that
Oh no, they're pulling all. Yeah,
all of it.
yeah. Any expense that occurred after May 9th, it comes out of our own pocket. So we're now funding our DE employees out of a separate fund.
Sure.
Mhm.
So not all of it, but everything after May 9th.
Everything after May 9th. Any expenses spent after May 9th, we have to fund from a separate program.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
So if you look at this program, when we talk about this terminated program, it was filling the gaps so the Vermonters could fully participate. All Vermonters could fully participate. And if you look at what's happening there, you look, for example, you're hearing from the federal government that we want to digitize everything. Well, think about those people that can't get on the internet today. They can't. First of all, you know where you are today with your own lives in terms of the importance of the internet. Think about when everything's totally digitized, we're going to have people that just going to be left offline. It also very much helps with the investment in the broadband infrastructure. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I do want to point out the Center on Rural Innovation did a study nationwide of fiber-connected communities. And those fiber-connected communities showed greater than a 200% increase in new business starts. And it has to be fiber in order to get that kind of economic result. And the other interesting piece of data, this comes from the National Skills Coalition 2023 study. If you provide people basic digital skills, they see a 23% increase in their income just by bringing people with no basic skills to skills. And then advanced skills, 45%, and then AI related at 47%. You get, so this is a real benefit and could really help with our future. If you look at a 23% increase, across the low, the 150% income level and below in the Vermont, that's another $1 billion in income coming to the state. So if you just think, if you don't have a heart to think about the benefits of this program, then think about the tax benefits it could have. Slides. So the program is sport access and leveraging grant funded networks. So it's digital skills for those people who can't afford them, digital devices for those people who can't afford them, digital skills to get people to effectively use those devices and the network. And of course, the other thing is really training on learn how to discern, I would call it. How do you avoid scams? How do you tell what's truth and fiction, especially with AI coming along? And the program used sub-grants to build the capacity of supporting community organizations. So that there's a percentage of that funds was used to support the administrative side of the VCBB, but the majority of it would be passed along to community organizations that can help with this program. And we had built a digital equity team of agencies that are supported and committed to this across the state. Next slide. So I'll talk about the internal impacts first. So we're funded by a series of interconnected grants and state funding, and we're working with a team that's being funded from these many connected programs. So the reduction in capacity is will impact 2 of our staff positions, which is about 20% of the staff, and it was 1.5 million over 5 years, that impacting a total of 5 positions. So there are 2 direct positions, 2 full-time, and then others, 3 other FTEs, full-time equivalents. So let's talk about the impact on sustainability. So we've been from the ARPA programs and the program that the legislature approved out of Act 71, and we've been building. And your first question was about getting to 60%. That was 60% coverage of 100 by 100. That is a result of the investment programs that we've had through ARPA, and of course B gets us the rest of the way. So our focus has been to getting people connected, as I've talked about, but the adoption of those networks improves the viability. So as we improve digital literacy devices and other programs, this actually increases the number of customers, which even helps the business plans further. So you've got people who are skilled today who are automatically, once they get that fiber connection, they're going to jump right on. And that creates, we built a business plan based on that. But getting lower income individuals connected improves those business plans further. And because these are community owned networks, ultimately allows us to reduce the price further because the business plan is improved. As you reduce the price further, you get more people connected. So the loss of the program does impact negatively impact the business plans. Next slide. So I talked about the direct impacts. The actual number, you see that 3.3 million was to the flow to those community organizations we talked about. And then this was the first of 3 grants. So there was more to come. So I talked about the other additional 5.3 million. There was also a competitive grant program that was canceled. So if you look at the commitment to digital equity, there was 2.75 billion committed nationwide for the capacity grants, which we're talking about here, which is the 10.6 million that we get. But there was also another 1.44 billion that was going to be created for competitive grants. That's also been canceled. So competitive grants are grants that any agency could compete for, and then the federal government could decide where to issue those funds based on the competitiveness of the program. We had one pretty healthy competitive grant that was being considered, and that was being submitted which now is not going to happen. So let's move to the broadband as a solution. This is really, we're talking about the immediate financial impacts, the impact to those people who are on the other side of the digital divide. But now let's talk about the growth opportunities that could happen in Vermont through the connections and the education. And we're going to talk about economic development, telehealth, agriculture, climate change, and wastewater. Big areas that could positively benefit from this. The program is meant, as you heard from the beginning, to ensure that all Vermonters benefit. So, you talk about public safety, energy, climate, health, workforce, infrastructure, education, farming, social connections, and more. So, next slide. But let's talk about economic development. So, broadband, this build out is really to help our rural communities. And helping our rural communities, those areas are more affordable. One of the things that I've heard several times, even personally, is people say, does real estate agent says, hear the question, does this have broadband? If they don't have broadband, often people walk away. So by providing, if you look at the rural areas of Vermont with a lower cost of housing, it's a more affordable place for our young people to move to. So more people are going to want to move there, especially young people. It results in a bigger workforce. And of course, the available workforce at lower costs meets new business. We talked about that Corey study. And then we get higher enrollment in schools, and that reverts the trend that's happening in our rural communities and in Vermont and nationwide. The same pattern is happening all across the nation. Rural communities. So the next slide, I'm not going to go through that. I hit the highlights, but you can see that the Center on Rural Innovation study has identified a number of benefits as a result of a vibrant, connected community. Next slide. Telehealth. I was at the annual libraries meeting down in Killington on Monday, and digital was definitely the topic of the day there. But an important topic of the day was telehealth. The librarians were talking about telehealth access points in the libraries. We're talking about that and telehealth access in the home. So if you think about our rural communities again, and the closing of hospitals and the reduction in the number of physicians that are serving these rural communities, telehealth becomes even more important. Not just to displace the loss of the existing healthcare, but also for the additional benefits for people to be able to, they don't have to drive to an appointment. There's many things that can be done with telehealth. It allows sick people to stay at home, don't have to come into the office and bring their COVID virus with them, and it reduces the impact of the climate because there's less transportation, and it makes it easier for family and caregivers. Next slide. So it also, we're still even with loss of this grant, continue to work with UVM Healthcare on telehealth, because there's a very strong interest from UVM Healthcare because of what the benefits it can have to the healthcare system. Less office space, maximize the productivity of healthcare workforce, and the whole list of things, enable use of patient portals. But what I want to talk about is, we think of just telehealth as an appointment, but the next generation of health is the wearable devices. I've got this watch here that tells me doesn't all my vitals, because I didn't spend that much, but you can buy these watches that tell you your vitals, and these vitals can be interconnected to an AI, an artificial intelligence machine with UVM Health. And when you've got health issues, especially when you think about a heart issue, and you start to see changes, those changes are being reported in real time over this fiber network, so that when you can catch things early, because it's even before I have a friend that's going in for a valve replacement, or I don't know, three level bypass, whatever it's called, and he didn't even know he had a problem, until he did a 10-year checkup. But if you have these monitors, you'll be able to tell in real time at an early basis before things get out of control. So there's a tremendous benefit from having real-time interconnected health data being transmitted to a monitoring system. And then, of course, when things start to go south, the doctor gets notified, and you get this call that says, "Hey, I think you got a problem." "Well, I feel great." Well, your data doesn't show you feel great. So now let's talk about agriculture. We're all familiar with the phosphorus runoff, the problems we've had with our waterways. Just by targeted application of nutrients, you can reduce phosphorus runoff by greater than 30%. That's the environmental benefit. But then from the farms itself save money, and it also provides an opportunity for getting to higher margin markets. You take building it. If you look at where farmers can make money, it's not from growing the raw material. It's from being able to sell finished goods, and accessing those markets is very helpful way to increase their margins. I'll just tell you an anecdote. I was with the farm that feeds Jasper Hill cheese. This young woman, she's a UVM graduate, running the farm, and I was visiting her farm, and she was talking about the fact that she drives 100 miles a day just to check the moisture content of her crops. A very brilliant young woman. And I think about driving 3 hours, driving 100 miles a day from the standpoint of the use of her brain, right? She could be doing a lot more creative things than driving around once you put in a smart farm, because you can do remote, you're always going to be doing remote checking of the health of your crop. Now let's talk about this climate change. If you look at where we are today, 40% of America's electricity is carbon free. So we have to increase the generation of carbon-free sources by 2.5-fold just to displace the existing carbon in our electrical system. And then to displace heating, transportation, and heating and ventilating transportation, the other fossil fuel uses, then we have to at least double it again. So we're looking at a significant increase that's needed in terms of generation. That's the generation side. Now let's look at the load side. I've got this little Chevy Bolt that I plug into a level 3 charger. That little Chevy Bolt is equal to 25 homes plugging in at once. And if you think about a Tesla tractor trailer, that plugging in is equal to 750 homes plugging in at once. So if you look at significant increases on the generation side with this distributed generation, along with these instantaneous loads, you really have to have a smart grid to make this all work. Otherwise, it's going to cost us a fortune to do it. You're not going to build your distribution network big enough to handle all that. That just is insurmountable. So significant future in terms of climate change. And then wastewater, we did an article in Vermont Digger about the benefits of wastewater. Rutland was actually doing some pretty smart things. Having all these interconnected smart devices through fiber running through your wastewater systems, you can now see where you start getting problems, especially with this combined sewer runoff issues. Right? If you see areas getting plugged up, you'll get an immediate notification. So there's tremendous potential in wastewater management as we think about the cost of improving those systems over time is pretty significant. So I would say it's critical we get those smart devices into our wastewater system. And then we talk about workforce development, empowering people to participate in the economy is a critical one. We talked about that 24% increase in income, just providing basic digital skills for people that don't have any. There's all these other benefits. You think about neurodivergent folks. I think about the story of a woman I ran into who was basically on a fixed income, $1,200 a month. She couldn't afford to be connected, but meanwhile, she has a neurodivergent child at home she has to take care of. And she says, I could work at home, but instead she's on a government benefit system, and she has a 4-year degree, perfectly capable of working, but because she has a neurodivergent child that has some issues, she can't do that. So, in summary, let's make sure all Vermonters can benefit. And that's what this DE program is all about. It's not a DEI program. It's a program that is directed towards all kinds of improvement. So it's really about improving not only our rural economy, our entire economy in the state of Vermont.
Were the CUDs gonna, how are you planning to find, the individual folks who are gonna be helped by this funding, by providing devices and training? I mean, it sounds like a really cool program. I was just wondering how you were helping, since it's, kind of a person by person thing. How were you gonna find folks?
So that was part of our plan. We actually hired a very good data analyst, Eugene. Her name's Eugene Lay, and collecting. For example, you look at U.S. Census data; it's not narrow enough to get to those folks. So we've done a tremendous amount of outreach already through surveys, through public meetings, and it's a combination of getting the word out to the folks that need it,
Right,
and then setting up those in-person meetings to identify who needs what, especially when you think about the homeless, for example. Yeah.
So sounds like you're fighting back, or the AG is, Rep Morrow?
While you're here, is there any update to be that we should know about?
Yeah, we're all hanging by our fingernails on B too, because you see what's happening at the federal level. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So originally we're supposed to get what is called new guidance. If you look at some of the statements that have been made by like Howard Lutnick, that had a department conference early on, said, "Oh, we're going to just do everything with Starlink." Well, the states, the Republican and the Democratic states, have all pushed back together, and I think that Howard Lutnick, who's going to be the decision maker, has got the message that that's not going to work. As you see this presentation, their state broadband offices nationwide also understand the benefits of fiber connected broadband. We set fiber as a preference for this reason. So it's pretty unanimous that fiber should be a preference. So originally we were supposed to get new guidance on May 16th. Now we're hearing it's going to be June. Some are saying it's July. Myself and some of the staffs are attending the NGA National Governors Association broadband meeting in Columbus in June 9th to 11th. We're hoping to hear more there, but there's it could range anywhere from if it went Howard Lutnick's original way, we as Governor Scott said, I like his words. Why should we rent space on Starlink when we could build infrastructure? And so it could. I think it's diminishing the chances of that happening. But if that happens, that would be pretty devastating. So there's clearly a lot of bureaucracy in this program. On one hand, I defend the program because you're doing a program like this. I've been involved with a number of project plans in my career, when you're doing big project plan, it takes time, you know, yeah, it took 3 years, maybe it should take a year and a half. I don't know. I'm not one to criticize, especially when you're getting the kind of funds we're getting. But there are still some hurdles in terms of permitting that we all view as unnecessary. And if those go away, great. But so there could be good news, there could be bad news.
Yeah, Rep. Howland.
So the fiber you put out, the 100, 100, 100 over 25, that has, the restrictions on that are components other than the fiber. And people could get higher delivery with different components either in the house or.
Yeah. So I think where you're going is with the network itself. So what's called what we call the demarcation point. It's called an optical network device, which is on the house. We'll get 100 by 100 to that optical network device. Beyond that, it is definitely dependent on the technology in the home. So for example, you know, I have 100 by 100 I have 1 gigabyte. If you look at Burlington Telecom, the modem I have is an old one, so I built my own new one to get the speeds I'm looking for. But it is going to, all the hardware that's connected will reduce that speed. So your phone, for example, you know, if you've got an old phone, it may only get 250 over 250. A newer phone might get 1 gig, but it is highly dependent on the electronics in your home.
Well, after this announcement came out, Cox and announced to take over of Charter.
Yeah, that's right.
And whoever and so would these systems that are built with this money become of interest to a company like that to expand technology further out in the system?
Well, the trend is clearly to fiber. The cable systems, for example,
Right.
I tell you, you know, fiber's size as a human hair can carry 30,000 times what a cable system can carry. So the trend is definitely to fiber. There's definitely larger companies are buying up fiber. AT&T is converting to fiber. So yeah, the trend is towards fiber. But the nice thing about our communication union districts is they can't buy them. So I mean, they're not for sale.
And so are there things that those types of companies can offer to their subscribers that can't be offered by the CUDs?
Oh no.
You're always.
Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
question. Oh,
Christine, does the Fidium also been shut off on this as well?
No. Fidium continues. Yeah. In fact, if you look at Fidium Partners, your Royal County is all Fidium.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But can they come and work in these other districts where the other CUDs or?
Yeah, they can, although it's not very attractive for them financially.
no, I have a question unless somebody wants
Sorry,
to.
Rep. Campbell.
Yeah. I've been a little distracted. Christine, did you mention whether Vermont is engaged in suing the federal government to make them follow through with this?
Yes, our general counsel, Tony Clitheroe, is working closely with the Attorney General's office on this.
And I presume the AG is also working with other states.
Yes, yep.
Yeah. Any idea what the status of that is? How long will it be before we actually have a suit filed? You know, anything?
Well, you know, I met with the Attorney General's office a couple of weeks after the election. You know, they said they can get injunctions within a week. So we're our general counsel just today is submitting all the information that's necessary to address that. So it's hard to say where it's going to go because our Attorney General's office piggybacks on the bigger states like California and New York. We don't have the resources to attack all this. You know, if you look at the number of lawsuits. I think the last thing I heard that we've had 20 lawsuits filed. The last election, the 2016 through 20, that they had filed 62 injunctions and were successful with 60 of them. So it's very successful. There's a high success rate of these injunctions. But our office is very busy.
But we're just at the beginning of the process, sounds like.
Yes, we're just in the beginning of the process.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
How does the loss of funding affect the build outs currently, especially in the rural areas that I represent?
The loss of digital equity funding does not impact the infrastructure bill. That's the question that was asked earlier about what's the potential for, the other program is the BEAD program, the broadband, we're not using the word equity here. What do we call it? Broadband enhancement and access deployment program. It was called broadband equity before. We're calling it enhancement now. That program is not impacted by this issue. That's the one we're hoping to get more information on in June.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for taking
You
your
bet.
time and all these important issues you're working on.
Yeah, Jack, we can go off live.